Hey, welcome to the June 2024 astrology forecast. You might be here live or you might be watching it later on. The original idea, you might recall, was that you could, I was going to do this on Zoom, and folks were going to email me for the link. But what happened was that folks couldn't find the place where the link was. And there was just a lot of stuff that went into it. And, this is just easier. So let's talk about June. Those of you that are watching it later, of course, you don't want to hear all those stories about what happened there. You've already demonstrated great patience. So let's get going with June. So my idea for June is I'm going to call it a tale of two Junes. We have two different, and that's so appropriate, this is Gemini season. It's the sign of the twins. We should have two things going on, right? We should have two things going on. And that is exactly what we have. We have the beginning half of the month, which is really dominated by this sort of Gemini energy. It's the Gemini festival, right? Where we have a lot of planets. We have the sun, Mercury, eventually, Venus, and Jupiter all in Gemini. And of course, we have the moon in Gemini coming up in the beginning part of the month. So we have a lot of Gemini energy as we begin the month. It is great for communicating. It is great for socializing. It's Gemini season. It's time to get out there and, socialize, go around the neighborhood, say hi to your neighbors that you haven't seen since last autumn. And I know I'm being very northocentric over here, but that's how it goes. So there's this sort of Gemini kind of energy, communication, socializing. It's the time of this month when if you got to get something done, you want to do it early. That's kind of the watchword for this month. Try to do it in the first half of the month. The second half of the month, the other side of the story, is much more Neptunian, Piscean, right? The feel that we get in the latter part of the month is a little bit more nebulous, a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like it's not that great for practical stuff. It's great for creativity, for meditation. It's a great time to go on retreat or maybe take an early summer vacation or something like that. And this actually will persist through the early part of July, the earliest part of July. I'll get to that in a minute. So the shift that occurs in the second half of the month puts us into a place that is more about letting serendipity rule. If you've got plans and you want to do things in a sort of logical, step-by-step kind of fashion, you want to connect the dots and put the lines together and all of that stuff that we do to feel like, we have sort of rational control of things. First half of the month. Second half of the month, you go with your gut, you follow your feelings, you let serendipity rule, you look for synchronicities, you look for clues from the cosmos about what you should be doing. It's a nice month, right? You got the first half and you got the second half. Here's something that's going on. Here's something that's going on all month long. Neptune, right? So we're not really getting away from the Neptunian vibe throughout the month because Neptune is at 29 degrees of his home sign of Pisces, what astrologers like to call the anaretic degree. It sounds like something you might have, like there's be a bad stomach problem or something like that, but it's not. The anaretic degree is the last degree of the sign, and it's the last degree of the zodiac. And so Neptune in his own home sign at the very last degree of the zodiac. We get a lot of Neptunian energy floating by us this month in a general kind of way. So that means that maybe some of that Neptunian serendipity ought to be part of your plan, or maybe it's not your plan, maybe be part of your perspective all month long. That's kind of the way I would look at that. And Neptune, it's interesting. Neptune is not really connecting with any other planets at 29 degrees. It's so far out there that it's not really making aspect. Sort of sextile in a general kind of way to Uranus and Taurus, And of course, the moon will come by, but there's not a lot connecting. Planets that are by themselves like that, not making any kind of an aspect, peregrine, we call them in astrology. Peregrine planets tend to be extra powerful, but in a sort of off to the side kind of way. It's the little extra little bit of weight that's not accounted for in the equation. It's like the little extra weight on the steering wheel that you have to kind of compensate for the fact that there's this side of the steering wheel is heavier than the other, or something like that. I don't know. I was going to say it's the magnet next to the compass, but it's not quite that bad. But so this Neptunian vibe, which it goes well with the Gemini thing, is going on this month. So we have these two sides. We have the Gemini festival, we have the Piscean party. They're actually kind of blended together a little bit. You can think about it as this sort of emphasis on the rational, conceptual, sort of morphs into the emphasis on the feeling intuitive as we go along through the course of the month. But really, both things are there all the time, in different degrees. Okay, that's the overview. Now, as we begin the month, we have Mercury coming into Gemini, and Jupiter is in Gemini. And what are they doing? They are making trines to Pluto in the first week. I think this has, and in a sort of in a separate story, Uranus is opposite truth teller asteroid Pallas Athene. And so the feel that we get with that, I think, is this is the truth coming out. This is speaking out of the truth. I would say that this is probably related to some really deep or wide investigative journalism that we'll see coming out in the first week over here. It is coming into the new moon, so perhaps it's the end of some story that we've already heard about before, or stories that we've already heard about before, and yet the aspects themselves suggest beginning something new, the emergence of a new story, because Jupiter and Mercury are pulling away from Pluto. I would look especially on the 3rd and 4th. And just as a reminder, I give specific dates that things are happening, but all of these aspects, they build up a day or so before and they trail off a day or so, or sometimes longer afterwards, like the Jupiter Pluto thing. I mean, that's really in orb for about a week on either side. So we're seeing a lot of this kind of communication, throwing around of ideas, significantly inflation data, and Jupiter Pluto often has to do with economics. Inflation data came out on May 31st with Jupiter in orb to Pluto, and it switched around the markets. So we get some of this kind of information coming at us sort of unexpectedly. Okay. The new moon is on the 6th. It is, my take on it is it's a time to maybe go get your summer reading list together. Say, okay, what do I want to do this summer? What do I want to read? Or what are my plans for the summer? And how do I want to approach the next few months? Let's sort of look at it that way, right? Gemini, it's about the everyday. It's about skills you might want to learn. It's about things that you might want to read, and, maybe getting in touch with folks. Again, it's the new moon, so don't make too big a deal out of it. It's not, we don't have to do too much right at the new moon. You just want to kind of consider it, maybe toss around some ideas, and then in a couple of days from the new moon, you can start to, really make decisions and actually write out the list. At the new moon itself, just meditate on things and stuff like that. You don't really need to do much. Don't set intentions at the new moon. Set intentions a day or two after, when you can see the crescent moon in the sky. That's my best advice, but you may not wait for that. Moving forward a little bit, On the 11th, Mars is square to Pluto. Now, these are the two rulers of Scorpio, and they're in a tense relationship with each other. Mars has moved into Taurus. Mars will move into Taurus on the 6th. Yeah, Mars moves into Taurus on the 8th, and then squares Pluto on the 11th. Mars-Pluto squares are potentially tense. These are two powerful planets. Mars wants to act. Pluto is seeding deep changes. I'm going to cough. See, in a weekly forecast, I would just edit that out. So some folks, and maybe you, some folks may be a little volatile with this energy. There's not a lot of patience associated with this. And Mars and Pluto are in fixed signs, which kind of holds them back a little bit, but that, you hold them back and then they go. Very likely, with Pluto in Aquarius, a lot of stuff plays out at the collective level. A lot of stuff is playing out at the collective level. So we'll see what happens with that. And I want to say, I made a big thing about Neptune being at 29 degrees of Pisces the entire time. Pluto is at 1 degree of Aquarius. And so a lot of times what happens is that the planets will aspect Neptune as they leave a sign. They'll make some kind of a connection to Neptune as they leave a sign. And then the first thing they do when they get into the new sign is meet up with Pluto by aspect. You see that, like the moon is certainly doing that all month long. Leaves one sign, says goodbye to Neptune, and then comes Pluto. You get this sort of switch over between the Neptunian and Plutonian vibes. All right. The 16th, 17th, actually the whole week between the 16th and the 22nd. Watch the weekly forecasts to get the specifics on this. But the week between the 16th and the 22nd, the third week in June, has this kind of very nebulous energy. Among other things, we have Mercury squaring Neptune. And so Mercury in Gemini, ready to generate different possibilities, and and then Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces is also very powerful. Now he does get aspected. Neptune in Pisces also generating many possibilities. And so we get this sort of squaring. It's like, it's Mercury Neptune squared. There's just a lot of energy around here that feels like almost anything could sound good at any given point in time. Is there any reality associated with it? We don't really know. We don't really know. So it's a very poor, that is, I know I said the second half of the month isn't really all that bad, but right around the 16th, 17th, 18th, when Mercury is square to Neptune, I'd be really, really careful about making any practical decisions. It is like Mercury retrograde raised to a power, especially in these signs. A really good idea may or may not have any sort of relationship to reality. That's still great for creativity. This is it's a wonderful, if all you're doing is generating an idea and playing around with it, and we'll see how it shakes out later. This is terrific for that. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just like not a good time to be signing an agreement for something, and a contract or anything like that. And it's even worse than Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrograde, things often have to be revised and redone and worked on again. Mercury Neptune doesn't give you any such out. You just begin something with this slippery aspect. Some people, not you, but some people will be a little bit, it's not even deceptive. I mean, some people will be deceptive, but it's not even deceptive in the sense of lying. It's almost like, a good story just seems better than, let's make sure that's off. Yeah, no, not a good story can seem better than the truth. Or a good story could be so good that the person that's telling it comes to believe it. It's that kind of stuff, which, you don't want to buy a house or a car or something like that, when that kind of stuff is going on. Again, it's a lovely energy unless you're looking for something that you would call the truth. Again, see how that plays out on the collective level. Now, that's 16th, 17th, 18th, and then we get into the next phase of things, which is the 19th through the 22nd. We have, first of all, on the 20th, we have the sun's ingress into Cancer. The sun, for those of us in the northern hemisphere, it's the summer solstice. The sun is as high in the sky as he will ever be, and the days are long. Oh, it's the best. It's the best. In the southern hemisphere, well, yeah, but in December they're bragging while the rest of us are freezing. So but only 15% of the people live in the southern hemisphere. So if they hate me, it's not that bad. It's a good place to go for us in the wintertime, though, isn't it? But I digress. It's the summer solstice. It's the peak, whether it's the summer solstice or the winter solstice. It's the peak of the soul. It's a peak in the solar cycle, right? This is a peak in the solar cycle. The whole flow of the year. This is a peak time in the flow of the year. We sort of climbed up to the top, and now comes the other side of things. We're in the second half of the year, which pretty much where we are, even if you do the calendar year. So we've gotten through half of the cycle, and now we're coming into the next half of the cycle. Right before, and I mean hours before, the sun goes into Cancer on the 20th, is going to square Neptune. And so 0 degrees Cancer, when the sun goes in on the world axis, in terms of what's going on in the world, this is a very big occurrence. And the fact that it's so closely square to Neptune when it happens really suggests some nebulousness and a little bit of uncertainty. And of course, we have the peak of the solar cycle connected to Neptune, right? It's like, okay, are we really getting the story? I'm not being conspiratorial here. It's just very difficult to know what's going on. You see how that resonates with the Mercury Neptune thing of just a few days before. And on top of all, on the 21st, we have, on the 22nd, on the 21st, we have the full moon. So it's the full moon in Capricorn, right? It's not the full moon in Sagittarius, which would have been added to the flurry of fury a little bit more. It's the full moon in Capricorn, but it's the full moon. So we have the high energy of the full moon. We have the high energy of the solstice, and we have the square from Neptune. Lots of activity, let's do things, let's get moving, And at the same time, not quite sure what it is we're moving on about. So this is, again, the 16th to the 22nd, for various reasons, looks quite a bit like a time it should be good party weekends. It's good party weeks. It's a great time for creativity, meditation. Have I said this enough? Go on retreat, enjoy yourself. It's good energy. Just, you believe it a little bit. All right. The last big event of the month is Saturn station to retrograde on the 29th. Now you think, well, Saturn here is like injecting a little bit of structure and seriousness and somberness to this occasion of Neptunian fluff. And indeed, a little bit of that is likely to be true. And we should treat this Saturn station, let's say the 28th, 29th, and into the 30th, we should treat it like a Saturn station. You put forth effort, you work, you're diligent as possible, even with all the Neptunian energy flowing around, you're diligent as possible. Don't expect great results. Saturn wants you to work hard, and then he gives you just what he thinks you deserve. So it's not going to necessarily, he wants you to work hard, and then he also throws in stumbling blocks. But it's a, even if it's something you're just cleaning out the garage or something, do it. And the thing is, though, of course, even Saturn is giving us a little bit of a Neptunian message, because he's in Pisces. And get this, this is this is terrific. We're going into July now, but on July 2nd, Neptune stations to retrograde. So the two stations overlap with each other. Saturn, structure, practicalities, work at it, and then Neptune. What? Neptune. Well, yeah, we'll talk about this in the next, in the latter weekly forecast, and we'll talk about it in the July forecast if we can get ourselves together with all of this Neptunian, Saturnian energy at the end of the month. But with a Neptune station early in July, we're definitely like, it's this sort of fogged out feeling, even in the midst of Saturn. It's, there's like the two almost opposing energies of, the Earth planet and the planet of other realms are both really, really strong. The boundaries are blurred. Right? The boundaries are blurred between the material and the metaphysical. The boundaries are blurred between the earthly and the spiritual. They're sort of always blurred, to tell you the truth, but we know that they're blurred because we can't figure anything out at this particular point in time. So that's the end of the month. Also, too, don't burn yourself out. Don't burn yourself out with that Saturnian work, because it's a little bit, Saturn and Pisces, it's a little bit like you're trying to, lug something through a really sort of slippery terrain, Pisces, Saturn and Pisces. I just think the image of Saturn and Pisces is a bit like, a really big, slow cargo ship, and then it stops in the water and needs to turn around direction. It's just not that easy. Plus the additional thing of Neptune. So don't burn yourself out, because both Saturn stations often correspond to reduced resistance and potentially immunity, and sometimes little bugs go around. And Neptune stations very frequently correspond to at least stories about various infectious diseases and things like that. So at this, there might just be some little colds or allergies for that matter, might really be spiking around this time. So, you don't want to burn yourself out. Don't burn yourself out at any point in time. I'm not a big fan of multitasking at any point in time, and I don't think anybody should be. This energy between the Gemini and the Pisces really does encourage multitasking, though. It really does say, let's try to do a few things at the same time. So if that's where you find yourself, if you've got a lot of stuff on your plate and you're trying to do all at once, try to take it one thing at a time, especially at the end of the month. Especially at the end of the month. You don't want to take on too much. It might be a real frustration if you feel that you should do things, but don't do too much. All right, let me see who we have here. Hello, June, says Heather. And hello, Armand, says Teresa. Thank you. Gemini rising, Aquarius, sun here. Ooh, Shari, what degree of Aquarius? When is there may be ads are going to run shortly. I didn't know that ads are going to run shortly in the midst of this. I'm going to hit skip ads. I don't want you guys to have, miss things out from ads. Hi, Jackie. Piscean party sound. Yeah, Piscean is good. See. Oh, yeah, Teresa, 2 degrees Aquarius. Yeah. Good. Nah, a little transformation is not the end of the world. Yeah, a new job this week. Yeah, the new moon isn't a bad time to start a new job. It's a pretty good time to start a new job, actually. After the new moon is, things are waxing, things are growing, but you don't have to wait around for it. You can you can get started at the new moon. It's certainly it's a little bit better than starting in the balsamic phase before the new moon. So if you're right there at the new moon, you're good. June 11th for hiding because of Mercury, because of Mars, Pluto. You can use that energy really, really productively. You really can use that energy very productively. Talk about a time not for multitasking. Pick something. I feel guilty now that I didn't say it. I have to put it in the weekly forecast when we get there. Look at it as a time for determined action. And if you have extra energy, if you're feeling a little bit, eh, then, sensible exercise or something like that, get out the extra energy, which you're very likely to have. Let's see. Gemini, oh, Sun is at Aquarius, 26 degrees. Well, you don't have to worry about Pluto until about 2042, so that's okay. But you're getting the nice trine from Pluto now, so your sun is out of there. You'll be getting some nice stuff from Mars this week too. Should be a very energetic week for you. Yeah, I'm sure, Teresa. Yeah, I'm sure it began as soon as Pluto entered into Aquarius last year. You don't go too crazy at the end of the month. Um, well, have a good month. Yeah, you guys have a great month too. I was gonna do that. I was gonna say, well, now next month we'll do the live broadcast on Zoom or something like that, but I don't think we're gonna do that. But keep watching the weekly forecast, subscribe, keep watching the weekly forecast. And if I change my mind, and with all the Gemini Pisces energy out there, I could change my mind. If I change my mind, then we will do it on Zoom. All right, you guys. Thank you, people who showed up live. I know that this was sort of a unfortunate situation with the whole scheduling thing, but sort of unfortunate with the whole scheduling thing. But some of you guys made it here, and that was great. And if you're watching all the way through to the end on tape, more power to you. So like and subscribe, catch those weekly forecasts, and we'll figure out what goes on. All right, adios, everybody.